What is up, freaks? It's your boy Marty Bent here to introduce this episode of Tales from the Crypt. The immense pleasure of sitting back down with our good friend Chris Stewart from Suredbits. Caught up for the first time since March of last year. Chris and Nadav from Suredbits were actually the last two individuals for the interview series to have an interview in person. Of course, we've met others in person since March, but not in our usual studio. It's usually traveling away. So Chris was one of the last to be in studio before all this stuff happened. So it was good to catch up with him. Talked a lot about what's going on at Suredbits. Steel manning Bitcoin versus Ethereum. I think this is a good episode to really push some of the developments that people are excited about, particularly DLCs, Schnorr, and Taproot. So hope you guys enjoy it. This episode is brought to you by good friends at the motherfucking Cash App. You already know about them, but let me tell you about them. If you don't know about them, they'll help you stack sats, send sats, receive sats, sell sats. We're saying sats, 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 sats. Because sats are the standard on the app now. You can DCA in the sats. You can set it and forget it by daily, weekly, bi-weekly. They have a sats back boost now. You shop wherever their boost card's accepted, which is wherever Visa's accepted, and you get some Bitcoin back on that. They have other boost partners as well. If you just want to go save money at their partner merchants, you can do that easily, made very easily via the cash card. What else do we have here? You can stack servers of stonks if you so please. I prefer stacking sats, but it's there. The optionality's there. Cash App can be your bank account. They're offering account numbers and routing numbers for you freaks if you want to direct deposit your paychecks into the app. So go do all this. If you haven't already, go download the Cash App, and when you do, use the code STACKINGSATS. It's STACKINGSATS. You're going to get $10, and $10 is going to go to our good friends at Owls Lacrosse. That's Owls Lacrosse. Woo! 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 Owls Lacrosse. And guess what, freaks? We got a new sponsor. We got a fucking shoe deal. We brought Atoms onto the roster. ATOMS. Atoms is a shoe company making the most comfortable, ideal, everyday shoe for you freaks. They have a low time preference in mind. They're building shoes that'll last for quite a while. All right. Their midsole is a custom foam that is designed to cushion your feet, giving you unparalleled comfort and a personalized fit. Freaks, I've had a pair for 2 months. I tell you, I only shill what I like. I really like these shoes. One of the coolest parts about the shoe is it comes in quarter sizes, so you can get a perfect fit and not have to worry about whether you're a size 10 or a 10.5. Get a 10.25. All right. Head over to atoms.com/TFTC and check out their shoes and get a free pair of socks at checkout when you go to atoms.com/TFTC. You can even pay in Bitcoin upon checkout. They're stacking sats over at Atoms. They got low time preference in mind. These shoes, they have elastic shoelaces that you only tie once. I've only ever tied my Atom shoes once, and I can slip them on, and they look good. They feel good. They have like microbial copper going through them so they don't smell. So if you're a smelly feet guy, these are the shoes for you. The socks are in Fuego, so if you can take advantage of the atoms.com/TFTC deal and get a free pair of their socks, highly recommend it. Really excited to have these guys on board. So go check it out, atoms.com/TFTC. Going to put the link in the show notes. Thank you to our sponsors and to you freaks. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode with Chris. If you're listening on a podcast, on YouTube, wherever you're listening, smash that subscribe button. Give us a rating, a review. Every little bit helps. We're trying to blow this up in 2021. We got a lot more video content coming out. I hope you're liking the Citadel dispatches. Last night, Matt sat down with Gigi and Croatia's BTC. They had an incredible conversation. I was able to hop in and out of that over the multi-hour rip that it was. So go check out everything we're doing. I'm going to be putting out more content. Happy to have Atoms on the team. Shout out to Cash App. Enjoy this episode. Take care.
You've had a dynamic where money's become freer than free.
If you talk about a Fed just gone nuts, all the central banks going nuts. So it's all acting like safe haven.
I believe that in a world where central bankers are tripping over themselves to devalue their currency, Bitcoin wins. In the world of fiat currencies, Bitcoin is the victor.
I mean, that's part of the bull case for Bitcoin.
If you're not paying attention, you probably should be.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. It's your boy Marty Bent here on a Tuesday afternoon. Cold Tuesday at the fireplace on next to me. Gas fireplace. Sorry, James O'Byrne. Sitting down with Chris Stewart again from Suredbits, and we were just reminiscing. The last time Chris and I hopped on the podcast was literally the last in-person interview before all this happened. Chris and Nadav flew into New York when things were getting a little dicey. Oh, how things have changed, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was like March 6th or 7th, just for everybody else having some context. March 6th or 7th of 2020, and me and Nadav, a colleague of mine at Suredbits, we were going to do the New York trip, go see everybody at BitDevs, do a podcast with Marty, see everybody in New York. And that was like just the time where it was like really everybody's starting to get a little nervous, and it's like looking around at other people. I may have made a joke in poor taste at BitDevs about doing a discrete log contract based if I had, coronavirus at the time. Didn't age well, so everybody there in the audience, I'm sorry for that one. But
hey, life goes on.
Life goes on. But yeah, I mean, it's like me and Marty were talking about just before. It's like, totally different world we live in now. It's very hard to do things in person currently. And just for the historical record, I suppose we are talking on January 5th of 2021, 9 months later from when we did our first podcast, I guess.
A lot has changed. Like I was telling you, the days have dragged, but the year flew by. I can't believe it's 2021 already.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And just to think, we are still in the middle of the COVID pandemic. And I don't know, vaccines are at least coming out. I don't know how you feel about that kind of stuff, but hopefully the end will be near.
I'm in no rush to take the vaccine, but if any of you freaks out there want to take it, your body, your choice. You can go do whatever you want. But go ahead.
That's probably the right approach to it, and hopefully, I guess for everybody out there, maybe in the back half of 2021 is when I'm looking at realistically, hopefully hitting the conference circuit again and getting out and talking to people in person and not having to do as much remote stuff. Do you think that's a pipe dream, Marty, or do you think that's realistic?
I think it's realistic. I think people are at a breaking point. The economy is at a breaking point. Small business section of the economy, particularly, things need to you need to get back to some sense of normalcy. And I think the data that's coming out from countries all over the world, and even from states here in the U.S., in terms of whether economic lockdowns make sense, is starting to conclude that they don't really. A lot of different factors depending on climate, the density of a population you're living in. New York, New Jersey, LA, very highly densely populated areas with very unhealthy people. I don't think you need a broad brush lockdown for everybody, or a lockdown at all. I think we're getting smarter at how to or at least better data is coming out. I don't know if we're getting smarter, but better data is coming out to prove that maybe lockdowns aren't as good of an idea as was initially thought. I think they're terrible ideas. And just from an economics perspective, like complex systems, like a global economy, cannot be turned off and on like a light switch.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with another colleague of mine at Suredbits, Ben Carmen, who's been on here before as well. And, he's been traveling for the holidays and seeing family and stuff. And he's mentioned of how we really kind of have different worlds in some sense within the United States now. Maybe that always was the case, but, he resides in Texas, and, coming up here, up north, for him was a stark contrast to, what reality is like in Texas, where you can go out and eat and stuff. And like here in Chicago, everything is totally locked down. And, I don't think that's going to change in the next couple months here in Illinois. Anyway, and just for the record, again, I live in Chicago, so that's why I'm, bringing that up. And hopefully, again, on the back half of 2021, that changes.
Yeah, no, the stark differences are, you don't even have to go Texas to Chicago, where I am in South Jersey, is relatively extremely lax compared to Philadelphia, which is where I spent a lot of the holidays, where you're still allowed to eat indoors down here, limited capacity, but gyms are still open. Where at Philly, it's complete lockdown as well. You can eat out in the cold maybe, but that's about it.
Go with that bubble life here in Chicago, I guess, is what you can do outside now. Is they make indoor facilities outside now, I guess, is the thing to do, rather than just using the existing indoor facilities. So
that's that's been my biggest pet peeve over this last year. It's just the logical inconsistency. It's just there is none, whether it be with these arbitrary restrictions allowing you to create indoor facilities outdoor, it's still being able to eat there, or what the mainstream media allows you to pay attention to. Now the theory that this virus potentially escaped from the lab in Wuhan is palatable enough for the New York Magazine to be writing about it, where 9 months ago you'd be labeled a crazy racist conspiracy theorist for even bringing it up. So just the logical inconsistencies, they piss me off. And this is why I focus on Bitcoin, because it provides objective truth in a world full of insanity. And why I like DLC is what you're working on particularly, and what we're going to talk about, what we have talked about the last time you're on this podcast. But you guys, it seems like lockdown life has been good for productivity at Suredbits. You guys have been putting out a lot of products and blog posts describing future products, but this product actually exists right now, the Contract for Difference, which is really what I want to talk about first. But you guys launched the predictions market, the presidential election bet market, I should say. You and Nicholas Dorier entered in a bet. You won, correct?
Yes, I did win. I guess depending on who you ask, I suppose that might still be a little bit of a contentious subject. But,
January 20th, man.
So for the freaks out there listening, just a really high level summary of like what a discrete log contract, or DLC, is it's a way to do bets directly on top of the Bitcoin blockchain based on a real world event. So what Marty's kind of hinting at here is me and Nicholas Dorier, who's a Bitcoin developer over in Japan. We did a bet based on the presidential election of the United States here in 2020. I bet that Joe Biden would win the presidential election, and Nicholas bet that Donald Trump would win the presidential election. And, we say this a little tongue in cheek because, as of this podcast recording, there's still a segment of the population that will not accept that Donald Trump lost. And, of course, they get a ton of media coverage because, Donald Trump sells. If we've learned anything for the last 4 years is, Donald Trump, he sells media subscriptions. So the media loves talking about him. But so, I mean, that is at a very high level what a DLC is. And it has a few benefits compared to just kind of a 2 of 3 multi-sig scenario where you have an arbiter deciding what the outcome is. DLCs are a little bit more private, a little bit more scalable on the technology side of things, and also don't require interaction from this third-party arbiter, which is a really nice feature to have too. So me and Nicholas, it was around September, I saw, maybe it was August, Nicholas sent out a tweet, thinking that the odds of the presidential election were skewed. Donald Trump's much more likely to win than, was reflected in the prediction markets at the time. And he also was looking for a way to enter into a bet without actually having to convert his Bitcoin into United States dollars or another fiat currency that gambling sites support, because he didn't want to lose out on price exposure to Bitcoin for the duration of the bet. And again, just to frame, when this setup process was happening was August of 2020. So, Bitcoin price was probably around 10 grand, maybe, $1,000 above or below that. But, one of the key parameters that Nicholas wanted in this bet was to be able to, keep this price exposure. And he, retrospectively looks wise in that sense, because Bitcoin, as of the time, I think when the bet was actually settled, Bitcoin was roughly $20,000 a piece. So we got to retain that price exposure to Bitcoin, which is a very nice feature of DLCs.
Yeah, it was pulling up the Outcome Observer bot to pull up the actual date. So you guys entered the bet on September 2nd.
Okay.
So with that, the Outcome Observer, which is the Oracle you use, correct?
Yes, it's twitter.com/outcome observer for anyone listening and wants to check this out.
So this is how the bet was announced to the world, that it had been engaged in, and both parties were willing, hoot hoot, or whoo whoo, as we should say here. Marty's house been giving me good lessons. I will BIP 340 sign the result of the 2020 USA presidential election with the following nonce. A string of numbers and letters representing the nonce follows, and then the message will be the SHA-256 hash of Republican _win or Democrat _win or other. So let's break down what the observer is doing in this situation.
Yeah, so the very first thing you need for a discrete log contract, or DLC, is you need an oracle that's willing to attest to the outcome in real life. So a key thing to remember with discrete log contracts is they are not trustless. They are definitely trusting in somebody that they will tell you the correct result at the end of the day. In this case, that Joe Biden won the presidential election. DLCs are a trust minimized way of executing bets directly on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. And so Marty's referencing this tweet here that the Outcome Observer published in September. And now that he's published this tweet along with some cryptographic information, anybody can use that cryptographic information that he embedded in the tweet and create bets that are predicated on what the Outcome Observer will sign in the future. So that's kind of a lot of technical jargon there. But the key thing to remember here is the powerful concept of DLCs is with a tweet and then a follow-up tweet, you can set up bets for hundreds of millions of dollars possibly, and then settle that exact same bet in a subsequent tweet. And, it's a very compact way to represent this information needed to set up these bets. And it's also a very compact way to settle these bets. All you've got to do is have access to Twitter, be able to read the Outcome Observer's tweets and take his signature and paste it into your wallet software and have the wallet software broadcast the correct transaction.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was funny that this was the first bet for this observer too, because it really tests the limits of the trust, or not trustless nature, but the trusted third party nature of the Oracle. What was it like having this be the first bet in this particular DLC? Because obviously a lot of people, like you mentioned, would argue that there was some fuckery with the election and that it is still unofficial until either or is inaugurated and actually sitting in the White House post January 20th.
Well, I mean, I actually think it's a great example because we can have discussions like this. It isn't such a black and white event that, I mean, I guess, again, depending on who you ask, it isn't such a black and white event. And you do, again, have trust in this third party to broadcast the correct results at the end of the day. The nice features that DLCs give you is if you want to, you can remain private from the Oracle. So the Oracle can have no idea that you're actually using them. In me and Nicholas' case, we obviously, publicize this and are using it for marketing purposes. But if we didn't want to, or for all we know, other people could have used the Oracle as well. We would have no way to prove that unless the people in the DLC revealed themselves. So it's a very nice feature that DLCs have that you don't see in other kind of Oracle protocols. Another, just for argument's sake, let's say that me and Nicholas didn't know about DLCs, never heard they existed. So me and Nicholas, we're two technical guys. I'm a Bitcoin developer. Nicholas is a Bitcoin developer. We would trust Uncle Marty, of course, to attest to, who won the presidential election. So we, all three of us could get together. Me and Nicholas are like, okay, we're going to bet 1 Bitcoin on this election. Marty, you are responsible for, telling us at the end of the day what this, what the outcome is. And, that would work as well. The hard part for you, Marty, is the Oracle in this scenario is for everybody that wanted to do this bet. So say if it wasn't just me and Nicholas, but it was, 100 other people, you would have to interact directly with those other 100 people and, send signatures back and forth, sign Bitcoin transactions, a bunch of really low level, annoying stuff that you'd have to deal with. With the DLCs, again, it simplifies a lot of this because it's from the Oracle's perspective, just a broadcast only mechanism. Again, like you can think of Twitter as like a fire hose. You just start spitting out digital signatures and everybody, that follows you on Twitter can see those and use that to settle their bets. So, I mean, that's really, the core feature behind DLCs is, streamlining this process and also building in these kind of accountability measures as well.
Yeah, and scalability too, right? You can scale these types of bets to the masses. Then on top of that, you could create redundancy in the oracles, correct? And have multiple oracles and only
we are working on that as we speak. Nadav, a colleague that I've referenced before at Suredbits, is actually just begin this specification process for getting that stuff finalized. You can probably expect a blog post from us in the next month talking about, how we executed a multi-oracle outcome. And just for the listeners, and I mean, frankly, since we're seeing a bunch of market turbulence and, number go up, I'm imagining you have a bunch of new listeners, Marty, that maybe aren't as familiar with Bitcoin and all this technical jargon. So,
welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome to this guy that's going to talk in a bunch of very technical terms that you don't understand. I'm very sorry for everybody.
Just, hey, freaks, if you're new to this show, if you're new freaks, welcome. Number one. Number two, it's all very daunting at first, but just let all these terms, these ideas hover above your mind and just keep getting exposure to them, and slowly but surely, you'll be able to put them together. If I can do it, you can too.
That's definitely a feeling that a lot of people feel, when they're getting into Bitcoin. And just for a point of reference, I've been, involved in Bitcoin for 6 or 7 years now, and there's still things that I feel like I don't fully understand. And as the community is also much larger now than what it previously was. So there's a lot more content out there. There's a lot more developments out there, and it's really hard to get a picture of the entire world at one point in time. But so what Marty is kind of talking about here is instead of just having one oracle that would tell us who won the presidential election, what Marty's hinting at here is maybe you could have two oracles and you could say, well, they both need to say Biden won, or they both need to say Trump won. Or if there's a conflict, so one says Trump wins and the other one says Biden wins, well, maybe you just want to refund your money at that point because you're like, well, I don't know, like it's obviously in this weird limbo state, and like you and your counterparty, which is Nicholas and I in this example, we could just be like, well, if that actually ends up happening, Nicholas, I really think the best, course of action here is just to refund us our initial money. will say, you know, the bet was negated, and that's the best way to handle this case. And you know, it's very important to remember with DLCs, these are all custom contracts. You can, you know, finagle them in any way you want, design them in, you know, whatever suits your use case. If you know, there's certain conditions that you want to think about and have, you know, Bitcoin sent based on that condition, that's really, you know, what the whole point of DLCs is, you know, they're incredibly flexible. We've done all sorts of different DLCs at this point, and you know, it really is kind of a really interesting base technology that I think we're going to see, you know, proliferate in the coming years to, you know, help spread Bitcoin's adoption, frankly.
No, I completely agree. I think so. For any of you new freaks that are listening now too, there's something I say a lot on this podcast, that I believe there's an order of operations to all of this. I believe we can get the decentralized world, the decentralized financial economy, if you will, brought onto Bitcoin. People will point to Ethereum and their expressive smart contracts and say, hey, look, they're beating you at it. But I would argue they're losing in robustness and decentralization from a full node perspective. And if they do get a lot of traction from here, it's going to congest their network. It's happening right now. It's happened in the past. They may be too far gone in that regards, but Bitcoin still, it hasn't failed at smart contracting capabilities. At the protocol level, they exist. Multisigs, HTLCs, very rudimentary, but smart contracts nonetheless. And what you guys are working on, Suredbits, is why I write about it so goddamn much, because I think it's the proper way to go about architecting these solutions, which are novel and are something the market frankly wants. It's obvious there's demand for these types of products out there. It's just, what is the order of operations? And I believe that scaling these use cases in a smart way via something like discrete log contracts, which allows you to put as little data as possible into the protocol level in a private way. And then if you push that to the Lightning Network, the benefits are even greater. So just to put the context of comparing what you're doing to like an Ethereum or something like that.
Well, and just to jump in here too, and this will kind of switch context a little bit and maybe speak to the OGs that are listening. And you know, something I really kind of worry about with Bitcoin is, so you know, Bitcoin has really won the battle in terms of the store of value narrative. I think, I mean, I turn on the TV now in the morning and I hear people on CNBC talking about Bitcoin as the store of value. I mean, I think, in my opinion, we've really won that narrative when, you know, the talking heads, so to speak, are on TV promoting it for us, which is great. I mean, that's a lot of hard work over the last 3 or 4 years from a lot of people in the Bitcoin community to, you know, build that narrative. And I think we're seeing the fruits of that labor paying off right now, and, you know, and it's reflected in the price. And, you know, that is not an easy feat, and it did take a lot. And for the really OGs in the crowd, they may remember a time when that wasn't the narrative. It was, you know, more of a payments narrative. You know, there was long ago, I guess at this point, you know, Bitcoin was thought just to be a payment layer rather than store of value layer. And that was a popular opinion. I think we've shifted the narrative in the right direction. But, you know, for, again, the OGs out there, it's that doesn't mean we have to concede the payments narrative, or that doesn't mean we have to concede the you know, financial settlement narrative to other blockchains. Like we can you know, we can have the entire pie, and that's like kind of what, you know, we're here to talk, or I'm here to talk about is, you know, we've got the store of value narrative that'll get us, you know, so far, but we really want to have, you know, more than just store of value happening on Bitcoin. We don't want it to be parasitic to the store of value narrative, but we can have both at the same time. I don't think it's this zero sum sort of game of like you can have one or the other. And you know, as an example, we have the Lightning Network now with Bitcoin. That's kind of the payments layer on top of Bitcoin that you can do fast, cheap, you know, instant payments, and they're also more private. I mean, it's really a net win and a remarkable achievement for everybody working in the Lightning Network community. What we're doing with DLCs is trying to really realize that sort of financial settlement layer using Bitcoin for big trades directly on top of the Bitcoin blockchain, and add even more value to Bitcoin, because now you're not just using it as a store of value, you're not just using it for payments, you can also use it for speculation directly on top of the Bitcoin blockchain, and add even more value to Bitcoin's proposition. And this is like how we start slowly chipping away. So I'm here to promote that narrative and say, again, it's not like these are parasitic to one another. It's not like you can only be a store of value, or it can only be payments, or you can only be, financial settlement rails. You can do all of the things above. It does take more time, and like you say, you have to have one before you have the other. But it is an annoyance to me, I guess you'd say, of like, we've got store of value, we've won, like game over. Let's just not change anything ever in the future, and you sit with that. When I think Bitcoin can be so much more, that doesn't mean it can't, do all these things well. And, that's what I'm passionate about, if you can't tell.
I am as well. I think we can get it all too. And especially if you use the Lightning Network, like I am an everyday user of the Lightning Network just through the nature of this podcast, syndicating it on the Sphinx chat, being able to receive and get payment streamed to me. Our site's BTC enabled, has Lightning Network enabled via BTC Pay server. We get invoices, Lightning invoices paid daily. Me paying invoices on something like BitcoinBountyHunt.com to pay for ads in a video game. Like it works today, and it does fulfill the payments use case that you described earlier. And that it's so rudimentary too when you think about it. The Sphinx app is also a chat app that's enabled by the Lightning Network. There's, like, I'm sure we'll get into the thick of it too, especially talking about your PTLC implementation on Eclair. Like, once that is the common way to open up channels, like the DLC functionality gets pushed to the Lightning Network, correct?
Yes. So that's, that is the grand vision. And maybe for those that don't know, PTLC stands for point time lock contracts. So it's just a new way to transfer value on the Lightning Network. It replaces an old primitive called HTLC, or hash time locked contract. And the very high level reason that they're much more valuable is because you can do math with PTLCs, is how you should think about it. And, math is very powerful if people don't know that. And once you have basic mathematical capabilities, it's really amazing what you can do. And my colleagues at Suredbits remind me of that every day. I'm like, oh my gosh, how does this work? Or what is this magic? And it truly is remarkable if you get some simple math primitives in there, what you can do with all these like kind of cryptocurrencies and I guess layer 2 solutions. So we've been chipping away at that at Suredbits as well. And that's, in 2021, I expect that to be a more realistic, thing as we see Taproot rolled out, which is an upgrade to Bitcoin that, should be out in 2021 at some point. Then, Lightning can really have more capabilities compared to what it has currently. And we're super excited about that.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the PTLC, implementation that you guys have for Eclair. Like, what does it mean? I wrote about it towards the end of November. So you build a proof of concept based on Eclair Lightning implementation. Implementation uses ECDSA adapter signature. So this is what makes it possible. And if Taproot Schnorr is activated, you would use Schnorr straight up, I assume, correct?
Yes. So the ECDSA adapter signatures, for those that are maybe a little less technical, they are a way to do some fancy layer 2 stuff and layer 1 stuff today on Bitcoin. ECDSA is kind of like the core digital signature algorithm that we use in Bitcoin to, verify digital signatures or create digital signatures All of that crypto stuff is done with something called ECDSA. That has some downsides to it. Mainly, it's hard to preserve mathematical operations using ECDSA, and Schnorr gives you a much more cleaner model to do these kind of math things that I'm talking about. And thanks to some innovation, actually shortly after we met in March of 2020, we've come to realize that some of this stuff can be done with adapter signatures and ECDSA, which is kind of what we're using for DLCs and to get away with a lot of this magic that's happening over there. But just to be clear, it's much cleaner with Schnorr. It is, much easier to reason about with Schnorr, and we're very excited for all that stuff to come out. With the PTLC stuff on Lightning, we wanted to kind of realize all of the blog posts that we've written about over the course of 2019, talking about cool new innovative features that are enabled on the Lightning Network with PTLCs, and we thought we'd take the step to actually at least from a proof of concept perspective, like start seeing like what it would actually look like to modify one of the existing Lightning implementations to support point time lock contracts. And Roman, an engineer at Suredbits, led the effort on that. We can relay payments back and forth between two PTLC enabled nodes spun up on the Lightning Network. You can't route, if I remember correctly, you cannot route through a non-PTLC aware node. So that's if you had an Alice, Bob, Carol situation where Alice is trying to pay Carol through Bob. If Bob was not aware of PTLCs, he would not be able to route payments between the two. So there is some limitations to this, technical limitations, and in terms of like getting things to be robust so they can be out on like the live Lightning Network and run with high reliability. There's still some work to do, but again, we wanted to kind of try and push the envelope, motivate people, make people realize that we're at the dawn of the Lightning Network, and there's much to come as well. Again, combining these technologies or composing these technologies like Lightning and DLCs, which we're really interested in, but again, are blocked until some changes are made to Bitcoin's base layer.
Yeah, that's why I said it. My final thought in the news thought of the week last week during these price runs. Don't let the price distract you from getting Schnorr Taproot activated, because it's going to enable a lot of extremely cool things, and even beyond like what you're working on. Like, let's steel man this, like, we're just shilling Schnorr Taproot so that Chris can get his products to market. It's going to do things well beyond that.
I'm all for it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so Schnorr Taproot has a bunch of like really interesting features in it. Again, like the core thing is like really just Schnorr itself is what I'm really excited about. Just again, for the simple fact that it gives us math in like this crypto world. So that's very powerful. Taproot itself has some privacy enhancing features, and it's very interesting to see all this regulation coming out with that may or may not have effects on different privacy schemes, and what that'll mean for Bitcoin. I think a lot of us OG Bitcoiners, again for the new listeners, we've kind of realized for a while the next frontier or the next big battle in Bitcoin will probably be over privacy enhancing features. I think that's not too controversial of a thing to say. We had a previous going back to Bitcoin archaeology here, it's like in 2017, there was a very big fight in Bitcoin called the, SegWit 2x and
the Fork Wars.
The Fork Wars, yeah, there we go. You've got a better brand for it than I do. But, there's a lot of contention in the Bitcoin community back then, and we actually ended up fragmenting as a community. And now we have, Bitcoin Cash as a product of that fragmentation. Bitcoin SV is a product of that fragmentation. Bitcoin Gold is, and like these are all kind of diverging views for what Bitcoin is. And just backing up a little bit here, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the same behavior when it comes to, enabling privacy enhancing features in Bitcoin, where some people are against this for whatever reason. They don't want to continue with Bitcoin, or will try and coerce the Bitcoin brand to be on their chain and say, this is the real Bitcoin. Bitcoin never had privacy from the beginning. You're the crazy people trying to enable this Bitcoin, privacy enhancing technology. You're changing Satoshi's vision, do I dare say? And you guys are the weirdos and the outcasts, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. I mean, the tremors are already starting to go off as we're seeing through all these announcements. And that's actually, like, the OCC announcement last night was pretty surprising, allowing banks to.
I was shocked.
Right?
Were you as shocked about that as I? I mean, I was shocked.
Like, the adversarial thinker in me is like, it's a trap. It's a trap. It's just like getting you comfortable with banking, or storing your Bitcoin with traditional banks. Like, that's like a stepping stone to lock people in, wall off the guarded, and make sure that they can't go back to self-custody. But if they're running nodes or sending transactions through nodes, they could have their node abide by a blacklist. But regardless, the optimist in me is like, wow, this is like the first stepping stone towards Hal Finney's Bitcoin bank vision, which you talk about narratives and quote unquote changing narratives throughout Bitcoin's history. And I like to say really the strongest narrative, which I would argue is Hal Finney's Bitcoin bank idea, has always been around. He put it on bitcointalk.org, and well, it hasn't always been around. It's been around for a while. Put it on bitcointalk.org, December 30th, 2010. So
you don't remember those days, Marty? No, just kidding. I was drinking way too many beers in college in those days.
I was as well. And the loudest narrative, which like Bitcoin uses at the protocol level, is a payments network. It certainly may have been the loudest, but I don't think it was the wisest. And I think the market is proving that over time. You mentioned Bitcoin Cash, BSV, whatever other shit forks there were. The market is pretty handily decided, yeah, you guys have very little value. Bitcoin, the network that prioritizes settlement and node distribution, seems to be the winner, at least for now, at this given point in time. But so that, like, the OCC's announcement last night has a lot of people talking about how Finney's...
Can we just summarize it real quick?
Yeah, so the OCC, the Office of...
I don't know. Don't ask me.
The Office of the Currency... The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, which Brian Brooks is currently the comptroller. He is ex-Coinbase. He was their head counsel for a time. They came out last night seemingly out of nowhere and sent a note to the banking industry and similar types of entities, giving quote-unquote legal clarity on legal permissibility, of certain payments-related activities that involve use of new technologies, including the use of independent node verification networks, which is how they describe what Bitcoin is and what Ethereum is in these blockchains. So the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, came out last night and basically said, hey, you banks, you are legally allowed to use blockchains as networks to move money alongside SWIFT, ACH, and FedWire. So it actually created, like, just giving the okay as blockchains as admissible rails through which to send value within the regulated financial system, which is pretty massive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be the most bullish piece of news. Maybe I've heard this entire price run we've had, and it seems to not be getting the play I think it deserves. But I mean, I just, again, from all the years of listening to sort of stablecoin FUD, I guess you'd say, and where does that sit in the regulatory landscape? If you're a USDC or a Tether, you've got to be really happy with this ruling, because it really starts to have the government. And I mean, even just as I think normal day Bitcoiners or crypto people, I think you've got to be really happy with this, because it starts like aligning government incentives, I think, more closely to these public blockchains. I'm not going to say they're like directly aligned, because I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but it is at least warming up to it, I think, is maybe a little bit better of a way to put it. So I think it's really encouraging news. Going back to like the DLC discussion, like maybe this starts laying the rails for, starting to do settlement of like derivatives, like on the Bitcoin blockchain. Like, is that the next step? Is like, it's okay to do, certain types of contracts directly on the Bitcoin blockchain. And, that obviously is an untested legal hypothesis, and, may or may not hold water, but I think it's super encouraging that we are seeing regs like this come out. Yes,
this particular, and that's what I wrote about in the Bent today. I wrote about this OCC announcement and how it's just like so perplexing how the lack of continuity between different regulators and different offices within the U.S. government. The IRS calls it one thing, Treasury calls it another. OCC is coming out calling it a rail equivalent to ACH and SWIFT. There's just a lot of regulatory confusion. And regardless of whatever the regulators deem is allowed or not allowed, the technology does have properties that enable it to do certain things. And if you lived in a vacuum where regulators didn't exist, and you're just able to think of the possibilities, the types of products that can be created by this tech, it's pretty mind blowing. You just mentioned derivatives via DLCs, so I think it's a good segue into DLCFD, so the contract for difference that you guys put out last week. Roman and Nadav entered into this contract of difference, and it's really cool and really innovative, and is like Bitcoin to its core, because you're essentially creating, in my mind, and I know you had some comments because Matt and I discussed this last week on RHR. I pushed back on him because I thought he compared it to the CDO market, which I think was not true, because everything's collateralized within the contract. But to describe it in layman's terms, you have two parties in this contract. One is taking a natural long position of Bitcoin. The other is attempting to enter a contract that and stabilize the value in USD terms over the course of that contract. So depending on how each puts in a certain amount of sats, and depending on if the price of Bitcoin goes up or down, each participant in the contract will get allocated sats accordingly. So if the price goes up, the person who's naturally long Bitcoin gets sats from the person who's trying to maintain that value over the course of the contract. Price is going up, you need less sats to lock in $1,100. Conversely, if the price is going down, the person who's naturally long is giving sats to the person who's trying to hold value in there. Price goes down, you need more sats to maintain $1,100.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, you can think of it sort of like a synthetic stablecoin. One key distinction, I guess I want to right off the bat here, that people confuse DLCs with is discrete log contracts are not like a new coin. It is, again, a derivatives technology. It's not like Tether or USDC or Bitcoin.
Is derivatives even a correct word? Because you're not getting any leverage exposure, right? It has to be fully collateralized.
Well, it is based on an underlying index or asset or whatever. So it's not dealing in like whatever it is you're betting on itself. It's it's one layer above. Mm-hmm. So that, I think that's where the term comes from. And again, it's not a coin. It's not anything new like that. It is general purpose technology. Like, me and Marty are both big time Bitcoin people, but discrete log contracts aren't even like really specific to Bitcoin. Like, it's very few things you need out of your blockchain to execute discrete log contracts on them. And also from the Oracle's perspective, going back to the outcome observer me and Marty were talking about earlier, the information that's on the outcome observer's Twitter page is nothing specific to Bitcoin. We could have just as easily done this bet on Zcash, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, almost any public blockchain. The Oracle is just totally unaware of like what blockchains being used. So again, it is general purpose technology that can be used for a wide variety of items. Like, again, I'm a big Bitcoin person. We at Suredbits are big believers in Bitcoin, but it is general purpose cryptocurrency technology. In the case of like the contract for difference that we executed, I just like have some notes like kind of written down here because I want to get the numbers right. It was December 17th of 2020. We entered in, or I didn't, Nadav and Roman entered into this contract for difference. The price of Bitcoin on December 17th was $22,800. So that is the fixed amount of value that Roman will receive when the contract is settled. It'll be as if Bitcoin remained at that price the entire time. So he's getting the stability aspect of it. For his use case, he cares that Bitcoin. I don't want Bitcoin price volatility. I just want to have a stable amount of value, like relative to the United States dollar. They both put in 100,000 satoshis of collateral. So going back to kind of if people listen to yours and Matt's podcast, I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, Matt was bringing up the fact that CFDs or contracts for difference played a role in like the 2008 financial crisis, and I think long-term capital management back in the late 90s too. This is because they weren't fully collateralized, as you were bringing up. So in this DLC that we executed here, both parties are fully collateralized. There's no partial collateralization going on. They each put in 100,000 satoshis of total collateral. That's roughly $22.80 by that market price that I quoted you earlier of $22,800. So you just divide it by a couple of tens, and that's how you get it there. So again, just to reiterate the fact, Roman wants to receive $22.80 of Bitcoin when this contract is settled. So that's the whole setup process. 100,000 satoshis each. Roman wants $22.80 of Bitcoin. The Bitcoin price as of that time was $22,000 and $22,800. So that's the setup process. Let's fast forward a week now. So now we're at December 21st of 2020 is when the actual settlement for this DLC occurred. So what's the first thing that needs to happen whenever a DLC is getting settled? You are dependent upon the Oracle to actually sign the Bitcoin price at the time of settlement. So Nadav and Roman, they're sitting here, they're waiting around for the Oracle to broadcast the signature that corresponds to what the price was, and the Oracle did broadcast the signature. He signed the price of $23,427. So Bitcoin had only, I guess you can say at this point, appreciated as like $600, I think it was. So, mild market volatility, nothing crazy that, we've seen since then. But still, again, Roman's core thing that he cares about is receiving $22.80 of Bitcoin when the contract settles. They take the signature that the Oracle produced and use it to fulfill a Bitcoin transaction that they have locally that pays Roman 97,000 satoshis. And yes, he gets 97,000 satoshis, which is really important to note here. He initially contributed 100,000 satoshis worth of collateral, and he's receiving less money back. This is because the Bitcoin price appreciated, and Roman's number one thing he cares about is having a stable amount of Bitcoin relative to United States dollars. So his end payout is less money than he initially began with. This is the terms of the contract. This was all laid out in advance, and it should be no surprise to Roman. He's receiving less satoshis than he began with. That's because Bitcoin price went up. And Nadav, of course, the counterparty to Roman's contract, will receive these extra 2,600 satoshis. This is, what Nadav gets for being naturally long Bitcoin. He receives more money at the end of the day, and both people are happy. So that's kind of like the end-to-end flow of this process, set up to settlement and how this works. And, I just said a lot of numbers there. I probably confused a bunch of people. I'm very sorry for everyone out there. We do have a blog post that's a write-up of this. If you go to our blog, suredbits.com/blog, you can find a full write-up of this stuff there. We've done other DLCs too, like one related to volatility, like a volatility DLC that we executed. And, we're playing around with all sorts of these contracts. And it's just really important to note that discrete log contracts are a general purpose sort of cryptocurrency technology. You can do all sorts of crazy things with these things, really, as far as the mind can imagine, or at least how far you can go with your financial engineering skill set. And, we think it really is a value add proposition to Bitcoin and can, kind of take us to the next leg of adoption.
No, I agree. And so let's focus in on the DLCFD, contract for difference. And again, it's so let's try and describe how people would make this same trade in the past. They'd usually go to BitMEX, and if they're one of the stable value in Bitcoin, they would hold a certain amount of Bitcoin, then they go short that amount of Bitcoin on BitMEX just to hold, and not that amount of Bitcoin, but
whatever the amount is,
an amount that will stabilize the value of their US dollar holdings. So that involves a third party in BitMEX. This particular DLCFD sort of doesn't take out third parties completely, but it does make them less powerful in the terms of that you're depending on an oracle who's serving potentially clients outside of this particular use case, as opposed to depending on Arthur and company securing their keys and being able to send stuff out without getting KYC AML slapped on them by the authorities. On top of that, it's SATS native, like you mentioned. Like, you don't have to create a new token to do any of this. And it's a building block that could lead to stable coins on the Lightning Network. Like, it's not possible on the Lightning Network yet, or it hasn't been implemented on the Lightning Network yet, but you can envision a world in which these CFDs become transferable, whether you're passing along private keys to give you access to the CFD. Maybe something like a state chain could enable that, or if you find a way to transfer ownership without moving private keys, that's when you have a dam breaking moment where you can just have a flood of liquidity of people going naturally long Bitcoin on one side and others trying to use Bitcoin, but also needing the value that they're transacting to be stable throughout their transaction process. And freaks, whether you like them or not, stablecoins have a very big place in this world right now, particularly in the third world, where people are using them significantly. And I've said this many times on this podcast throughout the years. Well, I don't personally need stable coins at this moment. Fiat works fine for me. My cuck bucks work fine for me. I use Bitcoin as my savings account. People are certainly using it, but I don't think they'll last forever. I do think we will transition to a Bitcoin standard, at which point these stable coins will be rendered sort of unnecessary. But until then, I think they're going to stick around.
Well, I'm gonna nitpick a little bit here, and I'm sorry for that, but I don't think again, using stable coins and DLCs together is, again, nitpicking here. I'm sorry, but again, DLCs are not a coin. DLCs can give you synthetic exposure and act like a stable coin, but again, they are not a coin.
This is important nitpick.
Yeah, so just be careful. Using.
You get the functionality of a stable coin with these contracts. And if these contracts become tradable, you'll get the exact same functionality.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it is a difference. There is a technical difference. Like, there is no physical stable coin that's represented by a UTXO on the Bitcoin blockchain. It's just a smart contract that behaves like a stable coin is a better way to kind of think about it. There are people, funnily enough, to confuse everybody even more, you can use stable coins with DLCs. So you can use them in a DLC as collateral if you wanted to. So, these technologies, again, DLCs play well with other technologies, and you can use them in conjunction with each other. Me and Marty have already kind of talked about using DLCs with the Lightning Network, two separate technologies that are kind of compatible with each other. Using DLCs with stablecoin tech, again, compatible with each other, not fundamentally incompatible. DLCs just need some sort of collateral and some sort of contract behavior that's defined by its the parties to the contract, and it will act accordingly as the contract is specified. So it's a it's a little bit of a nitpick, but it is important to note because there is no physical coin, or I don't know, no bearer asset. It's
a transaction at the end of the day, correct?
Yes, it's a transaction in whatever your collateral is, and the smart contract behaves based on your predefined terms.
Exactly. So you set up a transaction, which actually is an if or function with a bunch of transactions that do. I'm probably butchering this, but you set up a transaction, has certain conditions. If conditions are met, it releases Satoshis based on how the parties interacting with that contract want the Satoshis to be dispersed. So you basically, but let's not focus on the nitty gritty and get into the weeds
if I can just jump in here real quick, going back to
no, Chris, no.
Promoting our blog post. We at the top of our blog posts for DLCs. My colleague Nadav has added pictures showing the payout curve for this contract. So if you look at the DLCFD one, you see kind of as you approach 0 Satoshis, you see this kind of exponential behavior, and as you go out further, you see this flattening of the curve. Flattening of the curve means I guess something else these days, but
so does the virus is spreading.
Yes. So anyway, if you look very carefully at that graphic, if you pulled up our suredbits.com/blog and look at this curve that we have drawn in this image, you'll see little crosses. You'll see little crosses along the curve, and each one of those little crosses represents a Bitcoin transaction that can be completed by the Oracle if they broadcast a certain signature that corresponds to the price. So if you look at these curves, you'll see usually you'll see one cross on the far left-hand side, and you'll see one cross on the far right-hand side. These are the two Bitcoin transactions that bound the DLC. So this is the worst case on the left-hand side, the worst case on the right-hand side, the maximum amount of Satoshis that could be paid to either counterparty. And as you get towards the middle, you start seeing what looks like a line. There's so many Bitcoin transactions in there and they're so tightly compressed together. You start seeing what looks like a line, or some sort of continuous line or continuous curve in this graphic, and that's just a bunch of Bitcoin transactions pieced together. And maybe for the people that have a little bit more of an engineering background, all of these are just unsigned Bitcoin transactions, or uncompleted Bitcoin transactions is probably a better way to put it, that can be completed with that signature that we get from the Oracle. So you can think in the case of Roman and Nadav, I believe Nadav has this in the blog post, and I don't have this written down, so I'm not going to get this right, but I want to say there was 80,000 Bitcoin transactions involved in the setup process for their DLC CFD. Now, only one of these transactions will be valid at the end of the day. Nadav and Roman both had to store those transactions locally, and then depending upon what the Oracle broadcasts, they can complete one of these transactions and broadcast it to the Bitcoin blockchain. And maybe for some people, alarm bells might be going off here. It's 80,000 transactions. That's a lot of Bitcoin transactions. Do those all need to go on the Bitcoin blockchain? Referencing previous, Bitcoin drama in the past, I think we fought a fork war over this, and I'm thinking about getting the pitchforks out for this Chris Stewart guy, because he doesn't seem like a good guy. But the important thing to remember here is just one of these transactions will be valid at the end of the day, and that's the only thing that's going to end up on chain. There is some setup process that's done off chain, but that's the key component. It's off chain and negotiated between the two parties so that they can, have the capability to broadcast these transactions no matter what signature the Oracle broadcasts.
Yeah, this particular contract, there's 86,718. I had the blog post up so I can look at it. Yeah, it's
fine.
And so I guess, again, Steelman, is that fuck with mempools?
No. So again, it is just kept locally between you and your counterparty. So kind of like Lightning, sorry for the newbies here, but Lightning also kind of uses techniques like this where you and your counterparty on the Lightning Network have a bunch of Bitcoin transactions that you keep locally between each other. However, until your Lightning channel wants to be closed, you don't broadcast any of those transactions. They're used as like the normal analogy people use is like a contract in like traditional law. It's like 99% of contracts in traditional law are honored, and you do not need to go to court and litigate these things. However, in the 1%, there's always somebody that is going to try and fight the terms and conditions or whatever, and you do need to go to the judge and ask him to rule on something. So that's kind of the same principle applies to Lightning and DLCs. You need to have all these Bitcoin transactions around locally that just about in case there is a dispute or in case that outcome occurs, and you can broadcast the correct transaction to the Bitcoin blockchain.
Yeah. Very elegant solution. Again, freaks, old or new. This is what you guys are working on. Is something that is like probably one of the top 2 or 3 things I'm most excited about in the space, particularly in terms of being able to scale Bitcoin into the future and to bring it back to the particular CFD contract for difference, and like just to highlight, we made it clear, we nitpicked that it's not a stable coin. It is a pre-constructed transaction contract with 2 parties, but if that ever becomes tradable, these contracts become tradable, or transmissible is probably better. Just transferable. Okay, that's the word I was looking for.
Transmissible has a different meaning these days too.
Yes, exactly. You create you're not creating a stable coin, you're creating something that's better than a stable coin and reduces the risk. So right now, the huge point of FUD in the space is tether. It's
Sure.
driving the price of Bitcoin. I don't believe it's driving the price of Bitcoin. I believe Tether has some money in a bank account that's backing the tokens, though I would never trust Tether.
They have $800 million of it in New York. Didn't you hear?
Yes. Who knows? I don't care. I'm not
Well,
going
the
to use Tether.
The New York Attorney General seized $800 million from Tether, so I'm pretty sure it's in New York. Some of it's in New York somewhere.
Well, some of that Tether's tied up, it seems. But regardless, you reduce the risk of the Tether Corporation. You're using Sats only, and it's like so innovative how like it's just like a Sats balance sort of going back and forth depending on the price for this particular contract. And this is just one example of a fractal of crazy ideas and derivatives that could be created.
Well, and let me make a proposition for people that, like, again, maybe I know this is a popular view, especially amongst OG Bitcoiners, is like, I don't care about all this new technology. I just want to hold my Bitcoin, have it go to the moon, and I'm a happy guy after that. And
or gal, we're inclusive here at TFTC. Okay.
Sorry, God, I'm gonna get canceled. So anyway, why you should be excited for this if you are this OG Bitcoiner that doesn't really care about new technology and it's like, I'm cool with my Sats and Bitcoin prices going up. It's like, again, we want Bitcoin to be this like neutral settlement kind of reserve currency of the world. And this is technology that brings that. And, again, I'm a Bitcoiner, but like I just said earlier, this podcast, DLCs are not specific to Bitcoin. It's general purpose technology, can be used by any blockchain. And we as Bitcoiners, I want Bitcoin to be that neutral kind of settlement asset in the future, which is why I want to see Bitcoin adopting this and taking a wider share of this like kind of settlement rails pie that's out there, and Ethereum seems to be kind of winning right now. Bitcoin doesn't have to lose this fight. And, that's what I'm partially here to promote is, if we want Bitcoin to, keep appreciating in value, if you are this OG that's kind of tech agnostic, we shouldn't give up on these battles because there is real value there that's being accrued on other chains because, Bitcoin hasn't had this innovation so far. So, just food for thought. I think that's an important thing that especially I find amongst OG friends that I have that I hear coming up a lot.
Slow and steady. I'm confident in the fact that, or not the fact, the possibility that everything will come to Bitcoin at the end of the day. And again, process is important. Order of operations is important. But I do agree I also agree that there are a lot of people who discard the second, third layer attack because they only care about number go up and the Bitcoin as digital gold. But as you know, because you experiment with the technology closely, that's pigeonholing ourselves because the things that this technology enables, particularly Bitcoin and the layers on top of it, is mind-blowing. You're talking Bitcoin getting infused with some of the biggest video games in the world right now.
That's really cool. What the Zebedee guys are, over there working on is great. I have a question for you though, Marty. Can I ask you a question?
No, it's not allowed.
Canceled. No. So, I meant to look this up before this podcast, so hopefully I'm not getting this wrong. But I think for a while now, like Ethereum's blockchain fees have been much higher, and in total value, I think is more than Bitcoin blockchain fees. Is that true, or do you know that off the top of your head?
I think fees have gone up on Ethereum. The amount of gas needed to get a transaction through in a timely manner is considerably high. I do think you're correct in that Ethereum miners, particularly in recent months, have made more US dollar denominated profits via mining than Bitcoin miners.
And just that should scare everybody as Bitcoiners. It really should. I know we like to poke fun at Ethereum and say, oh yeah, you can't get your transaction confirmed. But hey, that's because people are paying high fees to get on Ethereum because there's real value to be, had there. They wouldn't be doing the transaction if, it wasn't valuable to them. And since Bitcoin is a deflationary currency, unlike Ethereum, ironically, we need blockchain fees in the future to have a sustainable network. So I just hope that trend doesn't continue in the future. And, that sort of flippening, especially for the OG holders that, want to, see their Bitcoin appreciate over time. That's something I watch as an OG holder. And I think, we do need to become self-sustaining with fees at some point in the future. And if we don't see that volume increase, it's not good for Bitcoin. I don't think it's fatal, but it definitely isn't good. And we need fees to increase.
I think they are increasing.
Okay, that's good.
Percentage of fees of the overall block reward is increasing. I'm pulling up. I'm on Coinmetrics. You got me on Coinmetrics. You have me on. I don't want mean transaction fee. What do I want here? Fees and revenue. Total fees USD. Boom. Let me zoom in here. Coinmetrics.io. Some great charting. Yeah, actually, they've been neck and neck recently.
Oh, okay, good.
But Ethereum has, it's higher right now. They have crazy fees today. They're making like 20 million as a network. It spiked up pretty high. Yeah, but I agree. I mean, but on top of that, so you have to factor in things.
Could I just I feel like if you're going to straw man, you'll say the fees are high on Ethereum and that's a bad thing. But if you're steel manning, you'd make the argument that I'm making, which is why I'm trying to make it, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, they've been battling back and forth. There's more miners are getting more fees. Steel man. That's a fact, but how much value is being transacted per transaction per block on Bitcoin? Considerably higher, and is the fact that Ethereum fees are so high a product of the demand for the network or the limitations of the network? Like how many more retail users are using Ethereum compared to 3 months ago? I wouldn't say it's a considerable amount, where Bitcoin, I wouldn't say it's a considerable amount either, but it may be higher. And I think it's just the nature of the efficiency of the protocol level of each. But I agree. Like we're going to need a fee market to develop. I think there is one developed. I think it has developed in the past. I think I'm not worried about the fee market because of things that you're working on, bringing DLCs to Bitcoin, bringing more robust Lightning Network capabilities and products to the network drives demand for UTXOs. This is my Jevons paradox theory can be applied to Bitcoin UTXOs, particularly for any of you freaks out there who don't know what Jevons paradox. It's most commonly applied to the oil and gas market, and the paradox is such that the more efficient you are with a good, the more you're going to consume. So the more efficient you are, the more utility it provides. You would assume that you're going to use less of it because it's more efficient. It's giving you more utility per unit, so you don't need as much. But actually, it's a paradox because you find that you end up using it a lot more because it's so useful, and you apply it to other areas of the economy that you didn't think of before. That efficiency was found by the market. So I think that can be applied to Bitcoin UTXOs, particularly too. UTXOs being the gas molecules that the paradox is applied to in the oil and gas industry, or the oil molecules, whatever molecules we're talking about. The UTXOs are the molecules in this case, and things like discrete log contracts, the things that Taproot and Schnorr will enable, the things that Lightning Network enables, creates utility and efficiency of UTXOs that will drive demand, that will drive usage, which will drive a fee market.
And again, to say controversial things, that appears to be Ethereum's problem. They're making stuff that's so valuable that they're seeing this like crazy spike in fees. And again, for a long-term sustainable cryptocurrency network, you want that. I mean, I think you want that behavior. It shows that you're providing real value, and people are willing to secure your chain through burning energy. Let's not get into proof of stake because that's a whole nother can of worms. But you are burning this energy. You are receiving, fees payment for your energy.
I completely agree, but it goes back to the order of operations. Like I think they fucked up in the order of operations. If we're comparing it to PEMDAS, they went straight to addition and subtraction, and they're going to fuck up the ability to actually solve the hard problem that they're trying to solve because they didn't fine tune for the PEM parentheses exponents multiplication part of the order of operations, which applied to blockchains is a robust protocol level that enables individuals to download full nodes and verify what's going on. I mean, they have objectively failed at that, as is evidenced via ETH 2.0. Like they have to build a whole new blockchain to actually attempt to scale this. And so ETH 1.0 has failed to scale. They have to transition that whole network to a whole new network, which, I mean, you could speak more to this as a software engineer, like how, like, have you ever seen me make the comparison of ETH 2.0 as like a classic second system syndrome example?
So I have a couple comments here. First off, I did not realize PEMDAS. Did you learn, like, is that what they taught you? And like, because for me, it was please excuse my dear
Aunt Sally. Yeah.
But I didn't realize they taught you the acronym, or did you just shorten it because it took me a while to.
Yeah. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or PEMDAS. Okay.
Yeah. The other, like, I mean, just in terms of like, feeling bad for people, I can never say this guy's last name. I think he's the lead maintainer of Geth, or, which is the Go implementation of Ethereum. Like, he had a serious meltdown, like, probably 2 or 3 months ago, and there was a bug in Ethereum, and I don't know if it was his fault or not. I think it was like a change in the Go runtime, but like, he's the guy that really takes a bunch of the brunt of like these kind of pie in the sky ideas, is like the guy that actually has to implement it and try and get it correct. And what they're trying to do in Ethereum is very ambitious. And if you value conservatism at all, which you probably should with your money, it's a tough sell. I don't know. That's where I always end up on the Ethereum stuff, is like it could really go poof overnight, and maybe that could happen to Bitcoin too. But I think it's much less likely to happen in Bitcoin than something like Ethereum. And I guess I forgot what your original question was. I'm sorry for that.
No, you asked me. You started asking the questions on this podcast, whether or not I was worried, and like, no, I'm not worried. So and I would even argue that Ethereum fees being as high as they are, again, is more of a product of the inefficiency of the protocol they've built. I think that probably has considerably more effect on the fee market than the actual demand for the DeFi products. And then, then you get into like, all right, who's actually using the network and what are they using it for? And I don't think it's a Turing complete world computer that is helping starving children in Africa. It's a bunch of degenerate VC traders in Wales just trying to stack more sats, frankly. Like, I don't think anybody's actually using it for some game-changing utility that's going to save the world. They're playing an arbitrage game between all the tokens that are being spun up.
That is, I mean, as far as I can tell, that is what is happening, specifically the arbitrage thing. But I don't like to pass too much judgment on people that do that, because I mean, you can vilify high frequency traders in traditional finance for doing that. Whether you can be on one side of the spectrum, it's like they provide no value and they're scalping profits from day traders, or you can say, oh, they're providing liquidity to the markets. They make sure markets operate efficiently. They lower bid-ask spreads on exchanges, and it's still yet to be seen, I guess. I think where all the DeFi stuff shakes out at. I think there's probably some stuff in there, but again, with all cryptocurrency stuff, it seems like there's a lot of nonsense around, core, like real valuable things. And it's tough to wait, especially if you're a beginner. Like, I'm sure there's, new listeners tuning in. If you're a beginner, it's very hard to cipher through the BS and figure out, where the signal is. And I mean, I'm sure were you, it was 2016, 2017 when you first started getting into crypto, or am I misremembering here?
That's when I started writing about it.
Okay.
I got into it in college, like 2013.
Do you remember how afraid you were when you began, of just like, what is all of like this stuff going on? Like these people, like super strong personalities that act like this is the next coming of Jesus or something. It's like, it's really it's a terrifying field to get into. At least I was terrified when I got into it.
It's daunting. Like I said, it's daunting. Hey, just let it flow over you freaks. Let the information float or above your head. You may not get it now, but via osmosis and enough exposure to quality content, which Chris and I hope this podcast episode is, you'll come around one day or another. But to bring it back to, where was I going to bring it back to? So DeFi. We were talking about DeFi. Like, I think DeFi is like another ephemeral phase. Like, so what is DeFi? Or what it's basically turned into another token economy, just another way of architecting this token economy. And I strongly believe that Bitcoin was created to get away from that type of currency barter. That's what the FX markets, foreign exchange markets, are simply barter for currencies at different exchange rates. Bitcoin is created to create a global apolitical network that allows you to send P2P transactions that are backed by a token that anybody can use. So I think all the yield farming and all that bullshit is rendered obsolete. Like the main use case is Uniswap, the DEX. Like, I think a decentralized exchange doesn't make a lot of sense unless you're exchanging like securities tokens, because at the end of the day, all these cryptocurrencies are supposed to be monetary goods. And once you have a free open market competition for monetary goods, which we got when Bitcoin was created, like, it's all going to play to power laws. And I believe it's like winner take all to most. I believe that's going to accrue to Bitcoin. So like Like trying to create company tokens and governance tokens that accrue value. It just doesn't really make sense to me. You're going to pay Bitcoin for goods and services. You're not going to convert into thousands of different tokens to receive a service. Even if it's done instantaneously, there's still that transaction friction that exists. Doesn't make sense to me.
Well, so like going back to our, point, the nitpicking I was doing before, and it's for purposes like this. It's like, I think you considered like discrete log contracts DeFi, right?
Yes.
And the thing is, why I was nitpicking with you earlier is like, there isn't a new token associated with it. However, it is DeFi. So it's like, now we enter into the realm of like, okay, we're doing DeFi, but it's settled in Bitcoin. Like, what does that mean? Is that the same thing as like token DeFi? I don't even know. Like, there's not even great words to like describe like the difference. It's like token DeFi versus
frictionless
DeFi or something like that. Like it's like, the DeFi term is like, this is like it's an internal like battle that I have of like, so like discrete log contracts probably isn't like the winning brand for like, what to call DLCs to normies. And so like say with the Lightning Network, they call it Lightning. It's a great name. It really is. And they don't call it the HTLC transfer network.
All right.
Which, is a mouthful. And that's kind of like where we're at with discrete log contracts currently. It's like, so do we rebrand it and call it like, Bitcoin DeFi, or, what's the best term? Because now DeFi has been a poison name. It's like
you tacked them head on, and we control the framing here, Chris, and we're going to call it frictionless DeFi. The DeFi over there has too much friction via token exchange. It doesn't make any sense. You're going to have to pay a bunch of taxes. You're accruing gains and losses from trading. I don't know. Frictionless DeFi sounds, I think that's descriptive when you compare the two types of quote unquote DeFi.
Well, in the Atomic Loans guys, they call it Bitcoin native DeFi. The Lightning Labs team was briefly pushing the Li-Fi, name. It's like, I don't know. I'm not very good at these like naming things. So, we'll have to figure out, a good way to brand it that doesn't like instantaneously turn off all of the, maximalists, because, with the DeFi name, means something very specific, unfortunately. Like we need like a term like L2, like layer 2 or something like that, or I don't know, something I'm still pondering, I guess you'd say, and asking you about it on a podcast, I guess.
frictionless finance. I don't know, take the D out. Frictionless DeFi.
Bitcoin DeFi.
Right. Well, yeah, it's like Bitcoin is decentralized finance at the end of the day. Like anybody can get capital, plug in a miner, point that hash at a pool, and get Bitcoin in a quasi decentralized. Yeah, you got the pool operator. I'm getting into semantics here, but like anybody could send me a Bitcoin address and ask me to fund that address.
Well, and that's
I could finance that, and they could provide me a service.
Well, that's like the amazing thing. Like I think about DLCs as well, as like, because like you just said, like it's as lightweight as I post a Bitcoin address on my Twitter, and people can pay me. Like they just need those like, string of characters, and I can receive money from anywhere around the world. And like that's why I like the DLC so much from the Oracle perspective, is like I can send out a tweet that contains this cryptographic information that anybody can engage in a DLC with around the world. I can post a follow-up settlement tweet and settle billions of dollars of, DLCs with those, what is it, like 280 times 2, or how many characters are on Twitter these days? I don't even know, but
280.
Yeah, so like that many characters, I can, have the power to, really settle a lot of money. It's really remarkable, I think.
Yeah, it's mind-bending. It's I don't want to hate on all the other projects, but I think it's all noise. I think what you're working on is Signal, and it seems like you're a bit worried that development for these particular products is moving a bit slow. But honestly, like, who the fuck is using this shit outside of, and not to diminish traders or anything like that, but there are taking advantage of an inefficiency created by the Ethereum platform. Like, if it's there, they're going to do it. Does that equate to long-term utility of the platform to the masses? I would argue no, especially considering the fact that they want to transition to this whole new network, which has to literally solve from my understanding, software engineering problems that have not been solved yet, and they're doing it on the fly, and selling the world on it. So good luck.
Yeah,
luck.
I mean,
I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I don't think I am, but I could be.
And that's why I feel so bad for that Peter. I think it's like Sigowski. I don't know how to say his name, but he's going to be the guy that is going to stay up many nights without sleep and have to, roll this stuff out, and it's going to be a painful experience for him. But I guess
sounds like a centralizing central point of failure, if you will.
Yeah,
if you ask me.
Has anything else got your clock ticking in Bitcoin lately, or in crypto? Is there anything else you've been following super closely?
Well,
or in the mining space? I guess I've been just kind of out of that. Like, is there anything interesting happening over there?
There's some interesting stuff happening in the mining space. We'll have more news on that in the coming months. I think mining space is very interesting right now. A lot of people buying a lot of miners. Whether or not they'll be able to execute on plugging all those miners in, we'll see. Great American Mining specifically, we're very excited for 2021 and our scaling future as a business.
Do you know, is this like rumors of Bitmain doubling their miner prices true? Or I think I've seen some talk on Twitter. It might have even been from you, so sorry if you tweeted that. And
No, Amanda Fabiano from Galaxy Digital, she pointed out, so yeah, that's the price for ASICs is very reflexive. So it tracks the price of Bitcoin, the underlying token, very closely, because they're basically call options on Bitcoin to be produced in the future, and they get more expensive as the price of Bitcoin gets more expensive, especially when you consider the fact that they are scarce goods too, and these manufacturers only have so much space on the foundry floors to produce these devices. So getting workable batches to market in a timely manner, especially coming out of a bear market where they have less priority on the foundry floors, creates this price crunch that you're seeing. Depending on your price of power production, mining could certainly still be profitable at these prices, probably is profitable at these prices for most people, considering the hash rate and difficulty level at the current moment. But be careful. That's what I would say. I mean, the top of the line hardware specifically is very, like 100% increase over the last month and a half is considerable.
Is there any new competitors entering in the hardware game for mining, or is it kind of still the same old players since the last few years, I guess?
Same old players. I mean, MicroBT, which makes the What's miners, is still a relatively new entrant compared to Bitmain and Avalon and other producers of the past. Bitmain had their civil war figured out, Jihan's out, and McCree has got the reins now in full control. So we'll see if they're able to recover from the optics hit they've taken over the last few years due to that gamble with Bitcoin Cash. And on top of that, their products have suffered as well. Their S15s and S17s, I believe, had a very high failure rate compared to the S9s and other models that Bitmain has put out. What's miners new? Yeah, I haven't heard anything. I mean, there's always rumors of a new ASIC manufacturer coming to market, but until somebody actually has the miners and has plugged them in, has proved they work, it's usually I don't want to say FUD, but nothing to pay attention to. I saw Avalon miners came out with a miner specific for cooling immersion systems, which is interesting. I haven't dove into the specs of that, but yeah, at the moment, in my mind, Bitmain and MicroBT are the two big dogs in the mining industry right now in terms of ASICs.
If you wanted to do a mining startup, or sorry, not mining startup, hardware, producing ASICs for SHA-256, how much capital do you think you need? Hundreds of millions?
Billions, I would imagine.
Billions. Isn't that insane?
Because you have to buy silicon, and then you have to buy space on the foundry floor, and then you're competing with the Apples, the Intels of the world.
There's the centralizing factor, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why we're very passionate about getting the oil industry hooked into the Bitcoin mining industry. I think it's going to be profitable for Bitcoin miners, for the producers, and then long-term for the Bitcoin network, because it highly incentivizes capital outlay in foundries that are outside of East Asia, particularly here in North America.
Is there, last I knew, TSMC was building a plant in like Arizona. Is that still like going as far as you know?
I believe so. Last I heard, which was like a month or two ago at this point, they break ground in March. I'd have to double check that. But last I heard, scheduled to break ground on actually building the foundry. And the Q1 this year should be done by 2024, 2025, I believe, is the last I saw. That's
a really big deal. I think just not even outside of the cryptocurrency space, like for United States, just kind of national security purposes, like, it's good to, with Intel kind of, losing its influence that I guess it used to have, it would be good to have something onshore, I guess.
Yeah. And actually, people don't talk about it a lot, but we actually have the rare earth metals in North America.
We do?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
They're in New Mexico and Arizona and parts of Mexico, I believe, in the last 3 years. A huge like trove of these rare earth minerals has been discovered on U.S. and Mexican soil. So something people don't talk about a lot. We could do it. It's just everybody's like, especially in the Bitcoin space, they're like, "Oh, it's impossible. We'll never catch up." It's like, shut the fuck up. You got to start somewhere. Yes, it seems pretty daunting now at this given point in time. It seems like a race that will never catch up in, but you can't catch up if you don't even fucking try.
That's true.
So it is. It's love him or hate him. Trump really pushed for that foundry last year specifically, and I'm very happy that is happening. And TSMC too, the Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company, like Taiwan is feeling the boot of China starting to press down on its neck like it did to Hong Kong, and they're probably one of the most profitable companies in the world, and like one of the most important companies in the world, and they seem to be capitalists at the end of the day, and they're actively trying to distribute their geographic and political risk. So it's a good move for them as well.
Yeah, I've been following, just one other thing that's kind of off topic, but have you been following any of the Jack Ma, I guess, conspiracy theory stuff? And I don't know if it's conspiracy theory or what, but it's like, it's freaking me out, man. It's like, right? Really? They're going to disappear one of the richest people in the world, the most prolific Chinese, people internationally, and, who knows what's actually going on? Maybe this is all FUD. I did see it in the Wall Street Journal this morning, so I'm a little bit, more like, maybe something is going on here, and it's not just, people on Twitter posting about it, but it's like, whoa, that is nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in the same boat as you. I only know that he said something bad about the CCP, something maybe added some constructive criticism to the mix, and he hasn't been seen in a few weeks to a couple months, I believe.
I think it's a couple months. Like the article I read this morning was like September. I think the last time somebody has seen him, which is like 3 months without, a guy that prolific is something else.
Nothing would surprise me from the Chinese Communist Party. So I hope you're okay, Jack Ma. Hope you're able to listen to this podcast and
buy some Bitcoin so we know you're okay, Jack.
Send an op return. We never. I could send an op return saying I'm Jack Ma.
It'd be epic. Like Julian Assange did this like a couple years ago. He held up a piece of paper with the latest Bitcoin block hash on it. We should get Jack Ma to do that. That would be awesome.
Yes. Vitalik had to do that too because the price of Ethereum was crashing after rumors of his death spread. Which is
really,
you don't remember? Yeah, it happened like 2016, 2017.
I do not remember that, but I'll have to do some archaeology after this and see this.
People thought he was dead. The price of ETH was crashing, and he had to do one of those hash pictures. Another example of centralization. But it's been a fascinating conversation. I don't even think we got to touch on everything DLC. So I think to wrap and tie a nice educational and to set expectations for the freaks out there, where are DLCs right now on Bitcoin? Where are they going? What needs to happen to get them to where they're going? And what can we expect in terms of a Cambrian explosion of functionality at the protocol level or layers above Bitcoin?
Yeah, so you can think of 2020 for DLCs was a lot of heads down protocol level work. So we had great partners, open source contributors, some some you don't, across the world, participating in the specification process for DLCs. That is out there on GitHub, github.com/discrete log contracts/DLC specs. We actually have a spec meeting tonight. We're getting close to being done on base chain stuff, or the on-chain stuff. And 2021 for us at Suredbits is going to be defined as we've done a lot of internal stuff. We've executed these between ourselves. We're going to start focusing on building tooling so it's easier for people outside of the know, so to speak, to actually use these things. So that's going to kind of be our mantra for 2021, is making these things easier to use, better tooling, start thinking about how we can get liquidity around these things so people can get in and out of these things easily, and looking for interesting contract types that people care about is at the end of the day what we want to be doing as well. So that's kind of our marching orders for 2021. And I guess as we sit here in January 5th, that's where our focus is going to be at.
I like your focus. I like your nose to the grindstone. Just put your heads down, get shit done.
Well, if they ever let us out of our apartments, maybe it wouldn't be so productive.
Maybe we do need another year of lockdowns just so Bitcoin can get into hyperspeed. No, so are you seriously worried about Bitcoin's long-term success being torpedoed by others getting this stuff to market quicker?
No, but I also think a lot of people are resting on laurels in Bitcoin and not actually trying to push the envelope. So I like to be the guy that rattles the cage a little bit and hey, have you thought about this? If we're losing the fee war, that isn't necessarily a good thing, especially if we're a deflationary currency. Just to remind everybody.
Well, the other half of that deflationary currency is the value of it goes up. So you need less sats to attain the same amount of purchasing power, as is proven by your CFD with the person who's naturally long winning that contract.
Which is absolutely true. And energy is purchased in dollars today, not Satoshis. So your argument is correct.
Yes. But I wish we had enough time to dive down the DLCs and second layers enabling Hal Finney's. Have you read Hal Finney's vision of a Bitcoin banking system?
No, embarrassingly, I have not. I'm going to have to do some research after this because I feel like I don't know. I feel like I'm really missing out. I'm getting a little FOMO about this.
Read today's bent.
Okay.
It's mentioned in there and linked. The post on Bitcoin Talks linked in there. Because a lot of people seem to be under the impression that, in short, Hal's theory is that to scale Bitcoin, obviously we're not going to have all the transactions happen at the base layer. That does not scale. You'll destroy decentralization if you try to scale in that fashion. So he envisioned a world of Bitcoin banks where you go back to what was a free banking system, which existed in places like Canada in the 1800s and right before and after World War II, World War I, I believe, is a timeline there. But a free banking system basically states that you have a political reserve asset or reserve assets. At the time in Canada, it was gold and silver, and then each private bank can issue their own currency with differing interest rates to their customers, basically gold and silver notes specific to each private bank. And so Hal, you didn't mention the Canadian banking system specifically, but the free banking system, I believe he mentioned, specifically in the post, and envisions a world where you have all these private banks that are collateralized with Bitcoin and offer different, I guess it would be different token currency. So this is where I guess I would disagree with Hal, but I don't think I necessarily disagree with Hal because I don't think he was around when we had things like Lightning and second layer solutions and DLCs. So I think the point I tried to make in the bent today is if that dream does come to fruition, I think a lot of people assume the way it comes to fruition is the incumbent banking system sort of holding all these Bitcoin and building the services on top of their stack, where I think the native properties of Bitcoin, particularly when you think about a world in which Taproot and Store exist and which Lightning exists, and allow you to do this in a much more decentralized fashion. And the open source software devs are always going to be able to outcompete these closed source bank entities, which really don't have great tech. They're still using Cobalt. So that was a long-winded description of the bend today.
Yeah, I used to work at an insurance company, and they have a lot of, not quite a bank, but basically a bank. And they have a lot of like this old technology laying around. And, that's going to be, I think, a lot of the story of the 2020s too, is how we fit legacy like regulations and stuff. And what does that mean in the crypto world? Like we're already seeing it here, in the early days of 2021, like we talked about earlier, this podcast is like, we got the comp control or whatever it is, OCC, issuing regs saying that, it's okay to do stable coins on Bitcoin. Like I think, or Ethereum, of course, like, any public chain, which is, I think, great news. And we'll have to see how those things develop over this next decade. And hopefully it's a, crypto friendly environment. One of the things going back to the election is like, whenever you have a change in an administration, you've got to really worry about, regressive regulations like coming in with the new administration. And, I guess this is a very US centric thing, but it's like, I think what we're seeing so far has been pretty good and I guess encouraging to hear, but we got 4 years to go. So hopefully nothing crazy happens there.
There are no attack vectors. Bitcoin will survive. No, I think
as long as they don't get to TSMC, right?
Right. Well, TSMC, Samsung's actually, and Samsung produces the chips that WhatsMiner uses.
Okay.
MicroBT, and Samsung's in South Korea. So it's not completely concentrated in Chinese dominated areas of South Asia. But yes, it is certainly a centralization factor. I think it's getting better. I think it will continue to get better. Like anything, there's an order of operations. You have to have these demand for this hardware first to incentivize people to build out these alternatives. It's going to take time for you. Sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. Keep following what people like Chris, Nadav, Ben, Roman are doing at Suredbits. Again, I say it all the time. Don't sleep on discrete log contracts and don't sleep on Suredbits and the things that you guys are building, because I truly believe it's like one of the most underrated areas of the whole entire space, whether it be Bitcoin, Ethereum. I love that nobody's paying attention to this. And I hope you feel that too, where it's just like, hey, we're putting out good work. People, legit people, I don't want to say that I'm a legit person. People I've talked to that I consider legit are super excited about discrete log contracts. I like real G's move in silence like lasagna, and I think the Suredbits team and Bitcoiners focus on DLCs are doing that.
Well, everybody stay tuned, and 2021 will again be more public facing and providing tooling and hopefully make it a lot easier for people to start playing around and experimenting with these things. So hopefully we can be back on TFTC in the second half of 2021 and talk about what we've accomplished.
Yeah, maybe we'll be engaging in a civil war bet at that point, but
or maybe even in person. How freakish would that be?
That would be incredible. That'd be incredible. And I'll come to you this time. I'm due for a Chicago trip.
Don't come now. It's terrible.
Well, it is literally like the worst part of it. Next month around this time is the worst part of the year.
Well, it's winter and we have everything shut down. So
yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to answer my stupid questions and clarify these things for me. And I think it was a good Steelman conversation too. Talking about alternatives, what we really want. I hope you freaks learned something. Chris, where can we find out about more I know you mentioned the Suredbits blog, but anywhere else you want to direct the freaks?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing for general information about us is just our Twitter, twitter.com/Suredbits. I'm sure Marty can provide a link in the descriptions of this, podcast. But, that's where we disseminate most of our information, and you should be able to find anything relevant from us there. And then my personal Twitter, if you want to follow me, is twitter.com/Chris_Stewart_5.
Both great follows, doing incredible things. Chris, thank you for your time. Can't wait to do this again.
Yeah, pleasure talking, Marty.
All right. Peace and love, freaks.